Sarah adjusted her white uniform as she climbed the marble staircase of the impressive Delacroix mansion. She was a beautiful woman with delicate features, honey-colored eyes that reflected natural kindness, and brown hair always pulled back in a perfect bun. In her early 20s, she had learned that life wasn't always generous, but she never lost her ability to smile through difficulties. The mansion where she worked as a nanny was a completely different world from her own. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and works of art worth more than she could ever earn in a lifetime. Still, Sarah had grown used to walking these silent halls, caring for the two young children of Ethan Delacroix, the city's most feared and respected business magnate. Ethan was a man who commanded respect without raising his voice. He was tall with an athletic build and chiseled features that looked like they were sculpted by an artist. He had a presence that filled any room. His steel blue eyes could be as cold as winter or as piercing as a storm, depending on his mood. Despite his wealth and power, there was something about him that Sarah couldn't quite decipher, a hidden sadness that appeared in moments of silence when he thought no one was watching. The children, 8-year-old Robert and 5-year-old Lily, were the only ray of light in their father's seemingly perfect but empty life. Robert had the same intensity in his gaze as his dad, while Lily had an angelic sweetness that melted the heart of anyone who met her. Sarah had been working at the mansion for several months, and although the job was demanding, she had grown deeply fond of the little ones. Ethan was a fair but distant employer. They rarely exchanged more words than were strictly necessary about the children's care. He left very early in the morning for his office and returned late at night when the kids were already asleep. In the afternoon, Sarah had free time while the children took their naps. It was during these quiet hours that she began to notice small details that had previously gone unnoticed. The mansion, no matter how luxurious, had a melancholic air. There were no family photos on the shelves, no woman's laughter echoing through the halls, and when the children asked about their mother, Ethan simply changed the subject. One rainy afternoon, while the children were sleeping soundly in their rooms, Sarah decided to go down to the kitchen to make herself some tea. The silence of the mansion was almost sepulchral, interrupted only by the drumming of rain against the windows. As she passed Ethan's study, she stopped in surprise. The door, which always remained locked, was ajar. Curiosity got the better of her. Sarah cautiously approached and peeked through the crack. What she saw left her completely frozen. Ethan was sitting in his leather armchair, but he didn't have his usual firm and dominant posture. His shoulders were slumped, his head slightly bowed, and in his hands he held a photograph. His lips moved in a barely audible whisper, as if he were having a conversation with the image. Sarah felt like she was invading a deeply intimate and private moment. She should have left immediately, but something in the expression of pure pain on this powerful man's face kept her glued to the spot. She had never seen Ethan show emotions, and witnessing his vulnerability moved her deeply. From her position, she couldn't clearly make out what the photograph showed, but it was evident that it held a special meaning for him. The way he caressed the frame with his fingers, the way his eyes welled up as he spoke to the image, everything indicated that it was someone very important in his life. "I'm so sorry," she heard him murmur. "Not a day goes by that I don't think of you. The kids look more and more like you every day, especially Lily. She has your smile and your way of tilting her head when she's concentrating. I wish you could see her grow up." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. It was obvious this was his wife, the mother of Robert and Lily, but there was something strange about it all. If the woman had passed away, why weren't there any photos of her in the house? Why did the children never talk about their mother as if they remembered her? "The doctor says you might never wake up," Ethan continued, his voice breaking. "It's been so long now. The kids ask for you constantly, but what can I tell them? How do I explain to children that their mother is in a vegetative state in a hospital with no hope of recovery?" Sarah put a hand to her mouth to stifle a gasp of surprise. The children's mother wasn't dead. She was alive, but in a vegetative state. Suddenly, many things began to make sense. The absence of family photos, the silence surrounding the topic of the mother, the constant sadness she perceived in Ethan. "Sarah is good with them," he continued, talking to the photograph. "She takes care of them as if they were her own. Sometimes I think you sent her to look after our family." She has your same kindness, your same patience with the little ones." Upon hearing her name, Sarah's heart raced. She knew she had to get away immediately, but Ethan's words had touched her deeply. It was the first time he had expressed any kind of recognition for her work. "I take them to see you every Sunday," Ethan whispered. "The doctors say you might be able to hear them, even if you can't respond. Robert reads you his favorite stories, and Lily sings you the songs Sarah teaches her. They're beautiful, my love. They're growing up so fast." Sarah realized that on Sundays, when she had her day off, Ethan would take the children out, supposedly for an outing. She never imagined that he was actually taking them to visit their mother in the hospital. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching down the hallway. Her heart leaped as she realized someone else was heading towards the study. Without a second thought, she quickly moved away from the door and pretended to be busy arranging some flowers in the vase in the foyer. Oscar, the house's butler, an older man with gray hair and impeccable manners, appeared carrying a tray with coffee. "Miss Sarah," he greeted her with a kind smile. "The children are still sleeping?" "Yes, Oscar, they're resting soundly," Sarah replied, trying to make her voice sound normal, despite the whirlwind of emotions she felt. "Mr. Delacroix must be in his study. He has an important video conference in a few minutes," Oscar commented as he headed toward the door. Sarah nodded and quickly went upstairs, needing a moment to process what she had just discovered. Once in her room, she sat on the bed and tried to put her thoughts in order. The revelation had completely changed her perspective on Ethan. The cold, distant man she knew was, in fact, a devastated husband and a father struggling to keep his family together while facing an unimaginable personal tragedy. The mother's absence was not due to a divorce or abandonment, but a medical situation that kept them separated, but not without hope. That night during dinner, Sarah looked at the family with new eyes. Robert and Lily ate quietly while Ethan watched them with a mix of love and melancholy that she could now interpret. The children seemed to have adapted to the situation, but Sarah wondered how much they truly understood about their mother's condition. "Sarah," Lily said in her sweet little voice, "do you think Mommy can hear us when we sing to her?" The question caught both Sarah and Ethan by surprise. It was the first time Lily had mentioned her mother in Sarah's presence, and the way she did it suggested that the children knew more than they let on. "I believe so, little one," Sarah replied tenderly. "Moms have a special connection with their children. I'm sure your mom feels all the love you have for her." Ethan looked up, and for the first time his eyes met Sarah's directly. In that look, there was gratitude, surprise, and something else she couldn't quite identify. "Will you come with us to see Mommy one Sunday?" Robert asked innocently. Sarah felt the tension in the air. She didn't know how to answer without revealing that she knew their secret. "If your dad doesn't mind," she finally replied, looking at Ethan with an expression that tried to convey understanding without revealing that she had discovered the truth. Ethan studied her for a long, intense moment, as if he were evaluating something important. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Maybe it would be good for Sarah to come with us," he said in a soft voice. "The children are comfortable with her." That night, after putting Robert and Lily to bed, Sarah couldn't fall asleep. Her mind was spinning around everything she had discovered. She had grown deeply fond of this family, but now she felt her connection to them was even deeper. The next day, while having breakfast alone in the kitchen before the family woke up, she found a folded note under her coffee cup. With her heart racing, she unfolded it and read the message written in Ethan's elegant handwriting. "Sarah, I think it's time we talk this afternoon when the kids are at their music lessons. Please come to my study. There are things I need to tell you." Sarah carefully folded the note and put it in her uniform pocket. The moment of truth had arrived, and although she felt nervous, she also experienced a strange sense of relief. She would no longer have to pretend she knew nothing about the family's situation. As she prepared breakfast for the children, Sarah reflected on how this conversation could change her relationship with all of them. A part of her wondered if Ethan had noticed her presence in the hallway the previous afternoon, or if he had simply decided it was time to trust her with the truth. What Sarah didn't know was that her discovery was just the tip of the iceberg of a much more complex and emotional story that was about to be revealed. The photograph she had seen in Ethan's hands held secrets that connected the past, the present, and a future that none of them could imagine. The conversation they would have that afternoon would not only change her understanding of the Delacroix family, but would lead her to discover a personal connection that would forever transform the lives of everyone involved. As the children ran through the garden playing before breakfast, Sarah watched them from the kitchen window, unaware that very soon she would become a fundamental piece in reuniting a family that had been separated by circumstances far beyond what anyone could imagine. The afternoon arrived with an agonizing slowness for Sarah. She had spent the day caring for Robert and Lily with the same dedication as always, but her mind couldn't fully concentrate on everyday activities. The children had noticed her distraction, and Lily, with that special intuition that little ones have, each of them had approached her during lunch. "Sarah, are you sad?" the little girl had asked, placing her small hand on the young woman's. "No, my love, I'm just thinking about some things," Sarah had replied, stroking Lily's golden curls that so reminded her of a porcelain doll. When it was time to take the children to their music classes at the neighborhood conservatory, Sarah's stomach tightened with nerves. Ethan, who usually left for the office early, had stayed home all day, working from his study. This was unusual, and Sarah suspected it had to do with the conversation they were about to have. After saying goodbye to Robert and Lily at the conservatory doors and making sure their teacher had received them, Sarah returned to the mansion with her heart racing. Oscar greeted her at the entrance with his usual kind smile. "Mr. Delacroix is waiting for you in his study," he informed her with a gesture that tried to be comforting. "He has asked not to be disturbed during your conversation." Sarah nodded and headed towards the study, straightening her uniform and trying to control her nerves. Upon reaching the door, she took a deep breath before knocking softly. "Come in," she heard Ethan's deep voice from inside. When she entered, she found Ethan standing by the window, contemplating the garden where the children had played that morning. He had removed his suit jacket and loosened his tie, which gave him a less formal but more human appearance. When he turned to her, Sarah could see he had been struggling with his emotions. "Sarah, thank you for coming," he said, gesturing towards the two leather armchairs in front of his desk. "Please have a seat." She sat on the edge of the armchair, maintaining an upright posture but without managing to relax completely. Ethan sat down across from her, and for the first time since she had been working in the house, she saw him truly vulnerable. "I think it's time you know the truth about our family," he began, interlacing his fingers on his knees. "The children have accepted you in a way I haven't seen since a long time. And yesterday, when Lily asked you about her mother, I realized you deserved to know the whole story." Sarah nodded, trying to appear surprised by the revelation that was about to come, even though her heart was racing because she knew she would finally learn all the details. "Elara, my wife and the mother of Robert and Lily, isn't dead as you've probably assumed," Ethan said, looking directly into her eyes. "She's at St. Raphael Hospital in the special care unit, in a vegetative state for several years." He paused as if the words were difficult to utter. "It was a traffic accident," he continued in a hoarse voice. "We were coming back from a family dinner when a drunk driver ran a red light and hit us from the side. I came away with minor injuries, but Elara took the direct impact. The doctors managed to save her life, but the brain damage was severe." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. Although she already knew part of the story, hearing it directly from Ethan moved her deeply. "The first few months after the accident were hell," he continued, getting up to move back to the window. "Robert was barely 4 years old, and Lily was a baby, just over a year old. I spent every day at the hospital waiting for some sign of improvement, some response. The doctors talked about miracles, about exceptional cases, but the months passed and Elara remained the same." He turned back to Sarah, and she could see the pain etched in every line of his face. "The children needed stability, a routine, someone who would be there for them. I hired several nannies before you, but none of them truly managed to connect with Robert and Lily. You've been different from day one." "Mr. Delacroix," Sarah began, but he raised a hand. "Please call me Ethan. I think we're past the formalities," he said with a sad smile. "I take them to visit their mother every Sunday. It's important that they maintain that connection, that they know their mom is still with us in some way. Robert understands the situation more, but Lily, she has hope that mommy will wake up and come home." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes moist with emotion. "It's beautiful that you maintain that connection," she said softly. "The children need to feel that their mother is still part of their lives." Ethan looked at her with an expression of gratitude mixed with surprise. Most people have told me I should consider turning off the machines, that Elara will never wake up, that I'm giving the children false hope. But I can't give up. As long as there's even the faintest possibility, I'll keep fighting for her. Of course you must keep fighting, Sarah replied with conviction. True love doesn't give up easily. Ethan walked over to his desk and picked up the same photograph that Sarah had seen the day before. He handed it to her, and she could see it clearly for the first time. What she saw left her completely breathless. The woman in the photograph was beautiful, with wavy blonde hair and blue eyes that shone with life and joy. But it wasn't just her beauty that impacted Sarah. It was her face, her features, the shape of her eyes, and her smile. Sarah knew that face. She saw it every day. With trembling hands, she returned the photograph to Ethan, trying to process what she had just discovered. It couldn't be a coincidence. The woman in the photograph looked extraordinarily like Eleanor Vaughn, one of the residents at the retirement home where Sarah worked on weekends to earn extra money. "Sarah, are you okay? You've gone very pale," Ethan asked, with evident concern in his voice. Sarah struggled to find her voice, not knowing how to explain what she was thinking without sounding completely crazy. She's a very beautiful woman," she managed to say. "She looks like she was very happy." "She was," Ethan confirmed, looking back at the photograph with tenderness. "Elara was the most joyful and optimistic person I've ever known. She always saw the good side of situations, always found reasons to smile. The children inherited that joy from her." Sarah nodded, but her mind was still racing. She had to be sure before saying anything that might seem far-fetched. "Which hospital is Elara in exactly?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "St. Raphael Hospital in the long-term special care wing. It's one of the best facilities in the city for these types of cases," Ethan replied. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Sarah lied. "It must be very difficult for you to visit her every week." Ethan sat down again, still holding the photograph. "It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life," he confessed. "Seeing her there, so still, so fragile. But it's also the most important. I talk to her about the children, about how they're growing up, about the funny things they say. I tell her about work, about the house. The doctors say it's possible she can hear, even if she can't respond." "I'm sure she hears you," Sarah said sincerely. "Love transcends any barrier." For the next few minutes, Ethan told her more details about the accident, about the first few days after the tragedy, about how he had to learn to be a father and mother to Robert and Lily while dealing with his own pain. When it was time to go pick up the children from the conservatory, Sarah felt overwhelmed by everything she had learned, but also by the suspicion that was growing in her mind. She needed to confirm something before she could say anything. "Ethan," Sarah said as they headed toward the door, "I'm honored that you shared this with me. The children are lucky to have a father who loves them so much." He stopped and looked at her with an expression Sarah had never seen before. There was gratitude, but also something deeper. "Thank you, Sarah. You don't know what it means to me to have someone who understands the situation. You've brought a stability to our lives that we haven't had in a long time." That night, after putting Robert and Lily to bed and making sure they were sound asleep, Sarah locked herself in her room and took out her phone. She had to make a call that could change everything. She dialed the number for St. Anthony's home where she worked on weekends. The night nurse on duty, Carmen, answered after several rings. "Hi, Carmen, it's Sarah, the one who works on weekends." She quickly identified herself. "I have a strange question, but I need you to help me with something." "Sure, Sarah, what do you need?" "Do you remember Eleanor Vaughn, the resident in room 312? Do you know anything about her history before she came to the home?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "It's strange that you're asking about her today of all days," Carmen said in a mysterious voice. "A man came a few hours ago asking about her. A very elegant, well-dressed man. He said he thought she might be his missing wife." Sarah's heart stopped completely. "What did you tell him?" "That we couldn't give out information without legal authorization, as is protocol. But the man seemed very upset. He said his wife had been in a coma in a hospital and had disappeared from there several months ago. He believed she had somehow ended up in our home." Sarah sat heavily on her bed trying to process this information. "Carmen, do you think it's possible that Eleanor isn't who we think she is? Honestly, Sarah, her case always seems strange to me. She arrived here several months ago, transferred from another hospital, but with no known family. Her documents said she was a homeless woman who had been found disoriented. But I always thought there was more to her story. She's too elegant, too refined, to have lived on the street. Is she still in a vegetative state? Actually, that's the most interesting part, Carmen said, lowering her voice. In the last few weeks, she's shown small signs of response. Nothing dramatic, but the doctors are intrigued, blinking, small finger movements, as if she's fighting to wake up. Sarah was speechless. If her suspicions were correct, Elara de la Croix was not at St. Raphael Hospital as Ethan believed. She had somehow ended up at St. Anthony's home, registered under a false identity. Carmen, I need to ask you a huge favor, Sarah said urgently. Could you send me a photograph of Eleanor? I just need to confirm something. Sarah, you know I can't do that. The rules about patient privacy are very strict. Please, it's very important. I think I could help reunite a family. After several minutes of conversation, Carmen finally agreed to discreetly send a photograph to her personal phone on the condition that Sarah not share it with anyone else without official permission. When the photograph arrived, Sarah looked at it and felt the world stop around her. There was no doubt. The woman in the photograph she had just received was exactly the same one she had seen in the portrait Ethan treasured. Elara de la Croix, the missing wife, the mother of Robert and Lily, was just a few miles away at the home where Sarah worked on weekends. But if Elara was at the home, who was at St. Raphael Hospital? And how had Elara ended up registered under a false identity in a home for homeless people? Sarah understood that she was at the center of a much more complex mystery than she had initially imagined. There were hidden secrets, confused identities, and a family that had been separated by circumstances she was only just beginning to understand. What she didn't know was that her discovery was about to unleash a chain of events that would reveal the truth about a conspiracy that had kept the De La Croix family apart, and that her role as a nanny was about to transform into something much more important, being the key to reuniting a family that had lost hope of being together again. As she looked at the photograph on her phone, Sarah made a decision that would change the course of all their lives. The next day, she would talk to Ethan, and together they would go to the home to confirm what seemed impossible, but was becoming more and more real. Elara de la Croix was alive. She was waking up, and she was waiting to be found by her family. Sarah spent the night wide awake, tossing and turning in bed, while her mind processed all the implications of her discovery. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the face of Elara in Ethan's photograph superimposed with the image of the woman from the home. There was no doubt they were the same person. When the first rays of sun began to filter through the curtains of her room, Sarah had already made a decision. She couldn't keep this information to herself. She had to tell Ethan the truth, no matter the consequences. She showered and dressed with more care than usual, knowing that this day would change everything for the De La Croix family. She went down to the kitchen early and prepared breakfast for the children, trying to maintain normalcy despite the whirlwind of emotions she felt. Robert and Lily appeared in the kitchen in their pajamas, rubbing their eyes and with messy hair. Lily came up to Sarah and hugged her waist, as she did every morning. "Good morning, my little princess," Sarah said, stroking the girl's curls as she poured fresh orange juice. "Sarah, I dreamed about Mommy last night," Lily said in a sleepy voice. "She was awake and she was singing a song to me. It was so pretty." Robert, who was more perceptive than his younger sister, looked at Sarah with curiosity. "Do you think Mommy dreams about us too?" he asked. "I'm sure she does," Sarah replied, feeling a lump form in her throat. Moms never stop thinking about their children, no matter where they are. Ethan appeared in the kitchen, dressed in a dark suit, ready to go to the office. He seemed more relaxed than on previous days, as if the previous day's conversation had lifted a burden he had been carrying for a long time. "Good morning," he grinned, ruffling Robert's hair and kissing Lily's forehead. Then he looked at Sarah with a genuine smile. "Thanks for everything you do for us, Sarah. I don't know how we could function without you." "Ethan," Sarah said, gathering her courage, "I need to talk to you urgently. There's something very important I have to tell you." The seriousness in her voice made Ethan look at her with immediate attention. "What's wrong? Are the children okay?" The children are perfect, Sarah hurried to say. But it's about Elara. I think I know where she really is. Ethan looked at her as if he hadn't understood the words. Sarah, I already explained yesterday. Elara is at St. Raphael Hospital. No, Sarah said softly. I don't think she is. The silence that followed was tense. Robert and Lily, sensing that something important was happening, had stopped eating and were watching the adults with big, curious eyes. Kids, Ethan said in a controlled voice, why don't you go brush your teeth? Sarah and I need to talk in private. Once the little ones had left the kitchen, Ethan approached Sarah. What are you trying to tell me? Sarah took a deep breath and told him about her weekend job at the home, about Eleanor Vaughn, the mysterious resident with no known family, and about the photograph she had seen the night before. It's her, Ethan, Sarah said, showing him the image on her phone. It's the exact same woman from your photograph. Ethan took the phone with trembling hands and stared at the image for several minutes. His face went through a full range of emotions: disbelief, hope, confusion, and finally a fierce determination. This can't be real, he murmured. I've been visiting the hospital every Sunday for months. The doctors have given me regular reports on her condition. Have you actually seen Elara at the hospital recently? Sarah asked gently. Ethan paused, thinking. No, I haven't been able to go into her room in the last few weeks. The doctors said she was going through a critical period and that visits were restricted, but they gave me detailed reports. Ethan, Sarah said, taking his hands, we need to go to the home right now. If it really is Elara and if she's showing signs of waking up, as I was told, we can't lose any more time. Without a moment's hesitation, Ethan called Oscar to look after the children, and they left immediately for St. Anthony's home. During the car ride, Ethan was silent, his hands clenched on the steering wheel, an expression of hope mixed with terror on his face. What if it's her? He finally asked. And if it really is Elara, then we'll have found a miracle, Sarah replied. When they arrived at the home, Sarah explained the situation to the nurses. They were initially reluctant due to privacy policies, but when Ethan showed his ID and the documents proving his marriage to Elara de la Croix, along with the family photos he carried in his wallet, they agreed to make an exception. The head nurse, an older woman named Dr. Mendoza, personally accompanied them to room 312. I must warn you, she said as they walked down the hallway, that Mrs. Vaughn, or de la Croix, if she turns out to be the same person, has been in a semi-conscious state. She has shown some signs of response, but she still hasn't spoken clearly. They stopped in front of the room door. Sarah could see Ethan was trembling slightly. Are you ready? She asked softly. He nodded and slowly pushed the door open. The room was modest, but clean and cozy. Beside the window was a bed where a woman lay with blonde hair spread out on the pillow. Although thinner and paler than in the photographs, there was no doubt that it was Elara. Ethan stood frozen at the entrance, tears rolling down his cheeks. Elara, he whispered, slowly approaching the bed. At the sound of his voice, the woman in the bed moved her head slightly. Her eyelids trembled, and slowly, very slowly, she opened her eyes. Elara's blue eyes gradually focused on Ethan's face. For a moment, there was confusion in her gaze, as if she were trying to remember something important. Ethan, she whispered in a voice hoarse from disuse. Ethan collapsed beside the bed, taking Elara's hands in his. Yes, my love, it's me. I've been looking for you. We've been looking for you. Elara closed her eyes, and for a moment, Sarah feared she had lost consciousness again. But then she opened them again, this time with more clarity. The children, she murmured. Where are my children? They're home, Ethan said, sobbing. They're okay, they're beautiful. They've grown so much. They've missed you every day. For the next hour, as Elara gradually regained full consciousness, Dr. Mendoza explained what had happened. Elara was transferred here several months ago from a private clinic, she explained. The documents indicated that she was an unidentified woman who had been found disoriented. I now understand that there was a deliberate mix-up in the records. A deliberate mix-up? Ethan asked. The doctor nodded gravely. We have been investigating irregularities in several patient transfers. We believe someone at the original hospital was involved in a scheme to fraudulently bill insurance companies. They would keep family members believing the patients were still in their care while secretly transferring them to cheaper institutions, pocketing the difference. Sarah felt a wave of indignation as she fully understood what had happened. Someone deliberately separated Elara from her family for financial gain? Exactly, and they would have continued to do so if they hadn't been discovered. We have already contacted the authorities. There will be a full investigation. Elara, who had been listening to the conversation weakly, squeezed Ethan's hand. I just want to see my babies, she whispered. Ethan kissed her forehead with infinite tenderness. We'll bring them here right now. Sarah, could you call Oscar and ask him to bring Robert and Lily? Sarah made the call immediately. For the next 30 minutes, Elara continued to regain strength gradually. The doctors at the home examined her and confirmed that, although weak, she was out of danger and would continue to recover. When Robert and Lily arrived, accompanied by Oscar, the scene that followed was something Sarah would remember forever. The children stopped at the entrance to the room, initially shy and confused. Lily hid behind her older brother, but Robert slowly walked towards the bed. Mommy? He asked in a small voice. Is it really you? Elara extended her weak arms towards him. Come here, my big boy. Yes, it's me. I'm back. Robert ran to the bed and carefully threw himself into his mother's arms. Lily, seeing that it was safe, ran after him. Elara hugged them both, crying and laughing at the same time. You've grown so much, Elara sobbed. My Robert is so tall, and my little Lily is a young lady. Mommy, I dreamed about you last night, Lily said excitedly. Did you dream about me too? I dreamed about you both every night, Elara replied, stroking her daughter's face. Even when I couldn't wake up, I knew you were there. Sarah watched the reunion from a corner of the room, feeling overwhelmed by the emotion of witnessing something so beautiful. Ethan approached her and put a hand on her shoulder. Sarah, he said in a voice full of gratitude. Without you, we would have never found Elara. I don't know how I can ever thank you. Seeing this family reunited is all the thanks I need, Sarah replied, wiping tears from her eyes. Elara, who had been talking with the children, looked up at Sarah. You're Sarah? She asked with a weak but beautiful smile. The children have told me about you. Thank you for taking care of my family when I couldn't. It's been an honor, Sarah replied sincerely. In the weeks that followed, Elara continued to recover at the home before being transferred home. Sarah continued to work with the family, but now her role changed from being the only maternal figure in the house to being a help for Elara as she readapted to family life. The investigation into the medical fraud revealed that the director of St. Raphael Hospital had been operating the scheme for years, affecting dozens of families. He was arrested along with several accomplices, and the affected families received compensation. But for the Croix family, no financial compensation could compare to the gift of being together again. Elara made a full recovery in the following months. Although she initially needed help with basic tasks as she regained her strength, her memory and personality returned intact. Her laughter once again echoed through the halls of the mansion, and the children blossomed with their mother's return. One sunny afternoon, several months after the reunion, Sarah was packing her belongings in her room. Elara had fully recovered and no longer needed full-time help. Although the family had offered her to stay permanently, Sarah felt it was time to give them space to reconnect as a nuclear family. There was a gentle knock on her door. Come in, Sarah said. Elara entered, radiant and healthy, carrying a tray with tea. I thought we could talk, she said, sitting next to Sarah on the bed. Elara, you know you don't have to do this. I understand the family needs its space. Elara took Sarah's hands in hers. Tra. During the months I was unconscious, a part of me knew that my children were being cared for by someone special. Now I know that person was you. She got up and went to her purse, from which she took out a small velvet box. This belonged to my grandmother and then my mother. I want you to have it. Sarah opened the box and found a beautiful necklace with a heart-shaped pendant with a small pearl in the center. Elara, I can't accept this. It's a family and treasure. Exactly, Elara smiled. And you're family to us. You always will be. They hugged, both crying tears of joy and gratitude. Besides, Elara continued with a mischievous smile, Ethan and I have been talking. We want to offer you a permanent job, not as a nanny, but as my personal assistant. I want to resume my art studies that I left when I had Robert, and I need someone I trust to help me organize my life as I readapt. Sarah looked at Elara with surprise and emotion. Seriously? Seriously. The children adore you. I adore you. Ethan says you're the best employee he's ever had. You'd be perfect to help me rebuild my life. A year later, Sarah was sitting in the Croix mansion's garden, watching Robert and Lily play. Elara, who had returned to her painting classes, was in her studio creating a beautiful work of art. Ethan had come home from work early, as he now frequently did, to spend time with his family. Life had fallen into a perfect rhythm. Sarah had found not only a job she loved, but a family that loved her back. Elara had recovered everything she had lost and more. The children had their mother back and had gained a big sister in Sarah. Ethan approached Sarah in the garden with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever regret working as a nanny that day you discovered our secret?" he asked. Sarah looked toward the house where she could see Elara painting by the window and then at the children playing happily. "Never," she replied with a smile. "I believe everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. Fate had a plan for all of us." "You know," Ethan said, sitting next to her on the garden bench, "Elara and I have been talking about expanding the family." Sarah looked at him with curiosity. "The children have been asking if they can have a little brother or sister, and Elara says she feels strong enough to consider the possibility." "That would be wonderful," Sarah said with genuine enthusiasm. "And you'd still be here to help, right? No matter how much our family grows, there will always be a place for you. Always." "Always," Sarah promised. "This is my family too." That night, as Sarah was getting ready for bed, she reflected on the incredible turn her life had taken. She had started as a simple nanny looking for work, but had ended up being destiny's instrument to reunite a family separated by injustice. She looked at the necklace Elara had given her, which she now wore every day as a reminder that families are not always made by blood, but by love and mutual dedication. In the next room, she could hear the soft voices of Elara and Ethan talking, planning their future together. Down the hall in their respective rooms, Robert and Lily slept peacefully, knowing that when they woke up, their complete family would be there. Sarah smiled and closed her eyes, feeling a profound peace. She had learned that miracles don't always happen dramatically. Sometimes they come disguised as coincidences, as part-time jobs, as photographs seen by chance. And sometimes the greatest miracles happen when a person decides to act with courage and love, no matter the consequences. The Croix family was complete again, and Sarah had found her place in the world. It was an ending that none of them could have imagined, but one that they had all helped create with their love, persistence, and faith that families are meant to be together. The mystery had been solved, justice had prevailed, and love had triumphed over all adversities. It was exactly the kind of ending that the best real-life stories always provide, perfect in its imperfection, beautiful in its simplicity, and eternal in its truth. The golden spring sun filtered through the windows of Elara's art studio, illuminating the colorful canvases that decorated the walls. The room, which had once been an empty, unused space, now overflowed with life and creativity. Elara, with her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and paint splotches on her apron, was putting the finishing touches on her latest work, a family portrait that would forever capture this perfect moment in their lives. In the garden, the joyful voices of the children created a symphony of happiness. Robert, now a tall and thoughtful teenager, patiently taught his sister Lily how to throw a baseball. Lily, now a vivacious girl with golden hair flying in the wind, laughed every time she missed the throw, never losing her characteristic enthusiasm. But it wasn't just the two of them in the garden. Running between them with wobbly but determined steps was little Isabella, just 2 years old, with her mother's same blue eyes and her father's mischievous smile. Her brown curls bounced as she chased her older siblings, screaming with joy. Sarah, now a woman in her 30s with a serene confidence that only comes from having found her true purpose in life, watched from the terrace as she organized Elara's art supplies. She wore a light blue dress that enhanced her honey-colored eyes, and the heart-shaped necklace Elara had given her gleamed softly on her neck. "Sarah," Elara called from her easel, "come see this. I think I finally managed to capture the essence of our family." Sarah approached and looked at the painting. It was extraordinary. Elara had painted the whole family in the garden, Ethan pushing Isabella on the swing he had installed under the ancient oak tree, Robert and Lily playing on the lawn, and in a corner of the canvas, Sarah herself sitting on the stone bench with a book in her hands, but with her gaze lovingly fixed on the family she cared for. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered, moved. "But Elara, you included me in the family portrait." "Of course," Elara replied with a radiant smile. "Where else would you be? You've been part of this family since the moment you entered our lives." Just then, Ethan appeared at the studio door carrying Isabella in his arms. The years had been generous to him. Although some silver hairs adorned his temples, his face radiated a peace and happiness he had never had before reuniting with Elara. "How are my two favorite artists?" he asked, kissing Elara's forehead and smiling at Sarah. "We just finished our family portrait," Elara announced proudly. Ethan contemplated the painting with a touching, evident admiration in his eyes. "It's perfect," he said softly. "It captures exactly who we are." Isabella extended her little arms towards Sarah, who received her with the natural affection she had developed for all the members of the Croix family. The little girl had grown up knowing Sarah as an integral part of her world, never questioning why this beautiful and loving woman was always present in the important moments of her life. "Sarah, are you coming to my birthday party?" Isabella asked in her sweet little voice, even though her birthday was several months away. "Of course, little one," Sarah replied, making the girl clap with excitement. Robert and Lily ran into the studio, sweaty and happy after their game in the garden. "Mommy, did you finish the painting?" Lily exclaimed, looking at the work with eyes shining with emotion. "Is Sarah in the picture too?" Robert asked, and seeing that she was, he smiled in approval. "Good. It wouldn't be a true family portrait without Sarah." That afternoon, as the family enjoyed an outdoor meal in the garden, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. St. Anthony's home had closed after the scandal, but Sarah had kept in touch with many of the nurses who had worked there, including Carmen, who now worked at the new medical center that Ethan had funded in honor of Elara. The private medical foundation they had established was dedicated specifically to investigating cases of missing patients and providing resources for families that had been separated by suspicious medical circumstances. Elara had become the outreach director, using her own experience to help other families find hope. "Sarah," Ethan said during dinner, "I have something to tell you." The whole family turned to him with curiosity. "Elara and I have been thinking about the future of our little foundation, and we believe it needs a family programs coordinator, someone who truly understands what it means to reunite families." Sarah looked at him, confused. "We want to officially offer you the position," Elara continued with a smile. "You would be the director of family reunification. You could help other families like ours find each other again." "But that would mean I could keep helping from here, right?" Sarah asked, looking at the children with concern. "Of course," Ethan laughed. "Your office would be here at home. The children need you. We need you. This will always be your home." As the stars began to appear in the night sky, the Croix family gathered in the living room. Elara played the piano softly while Robert read a book. Lily drew in her notebook, and Isabella slept peacefully in Sarah's arms. Ethan approached Sarah and handed her an elegant envelope. "What's this?" Sarah asked, curious. "Open it," Elara encouraged from the piano. Sarah carefully opened the envelope and found legal documents. As she read, her eyes filled with tears of emotion. "Adoption," she whispered. "We want you to be an official part of the family," Ethan explained. "As the children's big sister, as our daughter, if you want, of course." Sarah looked around at this family she had come to love more than her own life, at these children who had accepted her as an integral part of their world, at this house that had become her true home. "Yes," she finally said, her voice broken with emotion. "Yes, I want to be an official part of the Croix family." The children ran to her to hug her. Elara left the piano to join the family embrace, and Ethan wrapped them all in his strong arms. In that moment, Sarah understood that her life had taken exactly the course it was meant to. She had started as a young nanny, looking for a job, but she had found something infinitely more valuable. She had found her place in the world, her purpose, and a family that would love her unconditionally forever. Elara's necklace gleamed softly on her neck as she swayed with Isabella in her arms, listening to the laughter of Robert and Lily and feeling the warmth of Ethan and Elara's love all around her. Some stories end with happy endings. This story ended with a new, perfect beginning. I hope you liked the story. Today I have some news. If you like my stories, I'm sure you'll also love my new channel for prayer, Prayers with Alex. Come with me to praise God with prayers full of faith every morning and every night. The link is right here on the card and also in the pinned comment. I'll be waiting for you there from the bottom of my heart. I'd also love to know what you thought of this story. Tell me in the comments. And now another exciting video is appearing on the screen that will surely surprise you. Click to keep getting emotional with stories that touch the soul. See you there. Yeah.